Hello, Gail.
Hey,
It's
Larry.
another Friday. Gurus and
Yay.
Sages, a new look at the how to improve yourself industry. So let's talk about gurus and sages first. So what's a sage? A sage is someone where it's not about them. It's not about their story. It's not about their experience. There's been some sort of a wisdom or access to it that's come about that the sage is using to help other people. A guru is not quite there yet. It's still about them. It's still about their experience and maybe useful. It's just not quite the same thing. What's your definition? Does that make sense to you?
It very, very much. And like I've said in the past, for me, it's a process. So I started off as a guru. In fact, I was called a guru with, my experience and my training and my tools and my techniques and knowing which one. But what was funny is during that time, I would have moments where I would get this message, tell them to do this, Gail. Like,
Ooh.
okay, and something amazing would happen with the client. So I started to listen more and more and more, right? And now I have no idea what I'm going to say even right now. It's like I can feel them with me. It's amazing. Amazing.
So let's talk about who they are. I think that
They
might be helpful to people. So I've seen a bunch of LinkedIn posts recently about talking to God and all this, and I'm kind of like, is that right? I'm like, no, that's not quite right, actually. But oh, yes, it is right. But it's also not right. So what does that mean? It means that we are God. So our true self is what's really speaking to us, and it's trying to wake us up and direct what we're doing because it's a lot smarter than we are. It's not as mystical or magical as it is magical, but it's not as mystical as people think. It's actually kind of simple and practical. But that true self is connected into this power plant, and that power plant has an unlimited knowledge and understanding. And when you connect in with your true self inside yourself, you also have access to the same power plant.
so yes. So I like to explain God, and I'm doing air quotes, God, as man personifying from where we come in order to identify at the level that mankind was at the time, right? And so if you can look at God as this almighty creature that created you, then you can turn to that. As we as human beings have evolved, and quite frankly many have were like this, Socrates was already there, right? Already there. But as the masses are starting to get on board as well, we start to realize that this existence we're in is energy, and consciousness is energy, and God is consciousness, therefore energy. So yeah, it is and it isn't. And so when I say they, it's not voices for me per se, but it's a bunch of different feelings, and I can feel it coming from different places within my head and within my body.
Yes. And if you want to break it down a little further, for me, we are replications, and everything is a replication of this creative energy, however you want to call that, or however we want to describe it. So we are able to do the same things it does. That's
Right.
that's important because it's really about how does it work and how do we use it. Um, when you get to the point where you've made what I'm calling the last mile connection, so this is the 100% connection, which is like an on-off switch. You really are connected into the power plant because you've opened yourself up enough where that true self emerges, and now you can communicate in a different way. So you talk about Socrates. If I have a question for Socrates, I ask Socrates,
Yes.
and Socrates gives me an answer.
Yes.
I know
Yes.
it sounds crazy to people, but that's
So
how it
and
works.
no, I love telling this story, and we've done it before. The first time that I've tried, I could it's called a genius exercise. So what does it mean? I have a question. I don't know what the answer is. So I imagine, who would I know that would have the answer? For me, it was in this Thomas Jefferson, I believe, at this time. And so I imagine, okay, Thomas, come down. Thank you very much. Honored him for coming. Can I step into you and ask the question? Sure, Gail. Stepped in, asked the question, and I wrote the answer down left-handed.
Because
Right,
it's a channeled answer, basically.
right. Yes. And
Mhm.
so then you step out. Thank you very much. Break the connection because you don't want to be dragging him around with you all day. And and when I was done, I laughed. I said, I didn't know you were lefty. Right?
He was a lefty, wasn't he?
Yeah, I don't know. I bet he was. Right.
Yeah.
So that those kinds of experiences give you validation that what you think happened actually has happened.
Yes. So Napoleon Hill helped me write my book that I just finished on vacation here. It's a fable, a business fable for entrepreneurs to help entrepreneurs understand the kinds of things that they can do to create a what I'm calling a magic triangle, where you have a sense of freedom inside yourself, not tied to external conditions. You have a feeling of satisfaction about your vision because it's not just about you and getting what you want. And you have a sense of happiness because you're not waiting for a life condition to give you happiness. It's already there inside you. And why did Napoleon Hill show up? Because I I asked for help, and Napoleon Hill is looking for someone to help him. So this is synchronicity. Synchronicity doesn't just happen here. Synchronicity happens with this energetic for
Yeah.
a power as well. So somebody like Napoleon Hill, 1937, realized after he finished, he missed something in the book, which was, "Hey, folks, it's not about money." But if he had said that plain out, nobody would have bought it. So the title
Right.
he wanted for it originally, he said, wouldn't have the people wouldn't have bought it. So he did it this way. Now he wants to correct that. So he wrote a book. I got it right here. I just finished it. Outwitting the Devil. This explains what he really wanted to say afterwards. But then he couldn't publish it a year later when he wrote it because no one would have bought it. No one would have listened to him because he attacked religion and education
Right.
like wholesale. He's like, we got to get rid of all of it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's happening. The great shutdown of 2020 had so many benefits to it, and that is many of us turned within and stopped resisting the calling, if you will, and started asking for help in a way that was different and started getting answers. And many people started to explore not only working from home but homeschooling. And, I know that my son and daughter in law did homeschooling. And last year they sent their children to school and were very disappointed, even though it was a very expensive private school, at the lack of education the children were getting.
Yeah, I'm not even going to go there with that one.
Okay.
But that's a whole nother. Obviously, you should talk about it if you want. What I give people the opportunity to do who already have opened some energetic connection is realize that if you want to use the relationship, if you want to have a usable relationship, don't make it a passive relationship. So the idea of God comes and talks to me and all that's not real. That's going to get you a start. That's all that is. That's a start. What you want to do is you want to develop, think about it like Chat GPT. It's Chat GPT basically. It's all about the prompts
I have a friend who calls it her Google. The
for
Akashic
Google.
Records is Google.
Well, I like ChatGPT because ChatGPT is intelligent.
Right?
So it's coming back and saying, "What did you mean?"
Like a little more
Right.
clarification. Can you tell me a little bit more about this?
Can you tell me a little bit more?
Right.
And then you're asking it because you look at the answer and you're like, "Wait a minute, that's not what I was looking for."
Right.
There's a dialogue you can establish because what you're really doing is you're establishing a dialogue with your true self. It's not this amorphous God that is there somehow speaking to you in some code. It may appear
Barry,
that.
look for the burning bush.
Well, those are the little voices that get you started.
Right. Right. And that's the key to get you started. And what happened to me is I realized that those little voices have been with me my entire life. I can remember
Mm.
as a child walking down the street thinking, I don't come from here. And this is just a movie. I'm being played somewhere else. Someone else, something else is in control. And I couldn't grasp the concept at 7 or 8 years old. but I knew it.
You knew it. This is really important for people to understand because everything we were taught is wrong. That's the problem. A 7 and 8-year-old should have the answer to that in the culture. It shouldn't
Right.
have to be confusing. So if you look at cultures that had griots in Africa, that I know I'm pronouncing that right, that had shamans, that had sacred priests, what was going on there? Those are called lineage holders.
Right.
In other words, the truth was passed into the culture through the culture. There were individuals in the culture who were trained to receive the truth. Now you just start your own YouTube channel and you say, oh, I know because I had an experience.
Right.
That's not 100%. That's 99% maybe if we're lucky, which is not the same as 100%. You don't get to do this through your own personal experience. These are things that are available to you when you have emptied yourself out to allow them to come. And this is what happens in these traditional societies where this wisdom is passed on. And that person is going credibility in the society is the place to go when someone feels like something's missing or someone needs to understand how is my life supposed to be constructed now, or the 7, 8-year-old is going to have that question. So let's answer the question for them and let's have somebody do it who actually has had the experience and the training to do that.
Right. And so not too recently, maybe a year ago, I was with my grandson who was 7 and had a conversation around bad people.
The what people?
Bad people, which he brought up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, they really aren't, that's a judgment, right? And he said, well, don't bad people go to hell? And now I'm going nuts inside.
Yeah, how do we deal with this one?
Right.
Yeah. Where did you get that from?
Right. And so I said, well, I don't believe there is a hell. And he said, well, where do bad people go? I said, well, our soul is not bad. Our soul is not bad or good. And all souls go back to where they came from. And that's not hell. And so he stopped and thought about it. I said, so what people choose to do here may not be something that you like, but that's the ego, not the soul. And left it at that for that little brain to try and wrap his head around.
Yeah, let him think about it. And so one of the things that I think was helpful for me was to understand levels of consciousness. And if somebody wants to learn more, David Hawkins' Power versus Force is probably the best place to go to.
My Bible.
The map of consciousness was really instrumental for me to finally understand this. The level of consciousness we're at has to do in a way with how long we've been around. And it has nothing to do with your chronological age here. But the whole idea is that we evolve and expand our consciousness through life experiences that kick our ass. And on the other side of those life experiences is an exponential leap in consciousness. You experience the world through the level of consciousness that you're at. For example, Einstein has a quote, you can't solve a problem from the same level of consciousness with which it was created. That's what he's saying, because he elevated his consciousness and could look down on his problem and say, oh, wait a minute.
It's not such a big deal. Yeah, right. And nobody understood that statement.
No, they did not. They did, because Einstein was, I believe, 100% a completed individual who had found his true self. And he was emptied enough out inside to allow the equations to come into him. Do you really think, out there listening, Einstein was just smart enough to do the math? That's not how that worked. No one could do that.
No, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And people look at him as the anomaly, and he's not.
No, we can all do this.
Yes.
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 Because we're all God.
Thank you.
That's David Hawk. The top of the map of consciousness is the experience of life. The level of consciousness is I am God.
And that's the only I am that's real.
That's right. Everything else is just a belief system that confuses you.
Right. Right. So I am not a mother. I am not a teacher. I am not a grandmother. I am not a parent. I am not. The body is, and the experiences I went through had those experiences and created that energetic statement.
Yes.
But I have always been, here's the trick. Your thinking, your is at the same age at 5 as it is right now. Your thinking doesn't get old, doesn't get young. It just is.
Yes.
Right? Which is why when people hear themselves recorded, they can't relate.
I think the word thinking could maybe be confusing. So if you
Right.
read the Tibetan Book of the Dead, Dalai Lama has an intro to it, and he calls it pristine consciousness. So pristine consciousness kind of, that clicked for me. It's like a diamond. So it just is. And when you enter the state of pristine consciousness, you're 100%. Now, do you stay there all the time? No.
I wish.
It's like, so the Zen Buddhist nirvana, folks, sorry, doesn't exist. But the pristine consciousness does exist in the sense of you're aware of all your idiotic thoughts and behaviors and belief systems.
Right. And you say things like, okay, now what is it? What was my belief that brought this on? And what do I do about it right now?
Yes, because we're human. And well, the thing is, I think that in the energetic form, it's not human, but it's also, let's call it room to grow. So why okay, I'm going to blow somebody's mind here with this. Why is Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla giving Elon Musk all this information to make rocket ships and cars? You think Elon Musk is doing that by himself? No way. So why are they doing this? Because they feel a sense of not being complete. They're very happy because
Right.
you live in a state of love. But they want to help. They want to make an impact for their own purposes. Why did they pick Elon? I think they would probably prefer to find someone else. I don't know.
I think they're looking for someone else because Elon is slipping.
But there's very few people who have created the condition inside themselves to be prepared. So
Right.
Einstein wouldn't have been given this thing that he was given. Elon Musk would not have been given the thing he was giving if they hadn't prepared the condition for it.
Right. Right.
In terms of like learning some math basics.
Well, that
The
and
intelligence
there's
mechanism.
a point of him or a part of him that is open up. Trump
Yes.
is my perfect example. Everyone thinks he's a flaming asshole. He speaks his own truth. He doesn't bullshit. He comes from the heart. Whether you like his heart or not is none of my business or yours.
Oh my God, I'm so glad you said that. So let's go to 3 levels, and that's
Okay.
more complicated, but let's make it simple. So the 100% level means that you are existing with your true self. So I'm not being arrogant here. Gail's not being arrogant here. This is just a statement of fact. It's a statement of truth of we've had this experience. 99% means that you have not closed the last mile yet. These are the people on YouTube with big followings that are saying things that aren't quite right. But they're helpful, but they're not quite right because it's about them still. It's not about this pure kind of information and transmission. Now, we have a separation. So you can open up the part of yourself to spiritual energy like a Trump did or an Elon Musk and be completely clueless about yourself and meaning
Right.
self that exists in this world.
Right.
Because they have no understanding at all of what's really going on inside their human self that exists.
And that's when you're too much here and not enough here in the body.
Heaven and earth is out of balance.
Right. 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 And so it doesn't mean that they're not open up. They are very open up. And at another level, they're closed off. So you kind of touched about, the followers and then on YouTube and so forth. And we had a conversation earlier about, I was in a meeting yesterday, and one of the reasons why I'm backing off from being in networking meetings and such is because people are giving advice. And this
Mm,
particular meeting, vulnerability came up. And so much of their own story and advice, I literally felt like fingernails on a chalkboard going down my back,
yeah.
right? And like I could see harm being done.
Mm,
And that's the problem is people think they're getting help and advice. And I can relate to that story, so I'm going to buy in, right? And they end up going down even a worse rat hole than they were in. So I interjected, right? And when it came to vulnerability, I said, vulnerability is not about throwing up your shit all over social media. That doesn't mean you're vulnerable. People don't care. But it's dealing with it with yourself, being honest with yourself, facing your own bullshit and clearing it out, letting it go, forgiving yourself, forgiving, and getting rid of, we talked about attachments, getting rid of attachment. When you're at that point of clarity, then if you have a story that would be helpful to someone, by all means, share it.
the sage idea of 100% with the last mile connection into the energetic power plant and access to all of its wisdom is important because the experience is not the personal experience. The problem with the personal experience is we have an energetic blueprint inside ourselves that is archetypal in nature, meaning we all experience things in a very different way.
Right.
So for me personally, as a energetic type of someone who accesses this information through mind, if I'm talking to somebody, when I was talking to people, when I was at that 99% point, I was assuming they access through mind as well. So I would talk to somebody maybe who access that like you do through the heart, or someone who accesses this energetic truth through the body, or through an image in mind, a visualization, or an object in mind, which is a creative
Right.
object that must come out. I was giving them bad advice because what would work for me through a mind access will not work at all.
That's why
If you
tools and
do the
techniques
other
don't
four
work.
types,
That's why tools and techniques don't work, right?
it's the pathways to truth are always the same. Gail and I don't have our pathways to truth. We have a pathway that was, for some strange reason, well, not strange reason, but adapted and adjusted for the condition. So the condition in the society for me right now is we're riding off the rails in this modern society. Who can help us get back on track? Highly energized, highly successful entrepreneurs who can go through this inner journey as well.
Right.
Those people can make a huge impact because of social media. They have the marketing skills, but they have to close that last mile connection. They have to evolve their consciousness to make the impact. I don't care how purpose driven you are. It doesn't make any difference if you're not bringing this vision through you into
And
the world.
through you. So I have a book coming out, and that book in November of last year was the furthest thing from my mind. And I'm talking with a friend of mine who happens to be a channeler. He is like Abraham Hicks, right?
Yeah.
And he went, I was talking about pattern on the trestle board with him. And he's like, they're screaming at me, Gail, you have to bring this forward. I'm like, this thing's
Mm.
4,000 years old. What do you mean I have to bring this forward?
Can you explain what first channeling is to people,
So,
and then what
so
pattern on the
channeling is
trestle board is?
he hears voices. So you talked about, how we receive. He literally hears voices, right? And he has, since he was an infant, since he died, a lot of people who have passed over and come back, that closure stays open.
Mm.
So he has always heard voices and guidance from beyond, if you will. And so I said, okay. So I created a training, and patterns on the trestle board in the book that I wrote, Journey to Enlightenment, is about the fact that we're God, because it talks about creation, And it's taught, each chapter is, and then there was light. Oh, and by the way, this is how this is you. Oh,
Mm.
and then there's justice. Oh, by the way, and this is how this is you. Oh, and right. And so it's that, by the way, this is how it's relatable to you today.
I'm excited to read your book because of all of the traditions that I've read that are all exactly the same. I think the Kabbalah is one of the most hard to access. It really is a mind bender. So
Well,
you're
it's
taking
so
some,
complex. So, this is,
yeah.
101.
I'm going to check on LinkedIn
See if there's any
because in the
comments.
studio I can't see what's going on here, and I want to see if there's some comments. So I'm going to throw that up and let my browser refresh, and then we'll check and see what's going on there. I want to make this practical for people so you can get started. So the first thing you want to do is you want to spend 30 minutes a day with yourself. And I'm going to give you some bad news. Turn that off. No meditation, no exercise, no headphones, no nothing. Spend 30 minutes a day with yourself. Think about how you use Chat GPT and do that. You want to write it down? That's fine. If you want to listen to it, that's fine. If you want to experience in your body, that's fine. If you want a visualization, that's fine. If something pops into mind that feels like something you want to flush out, that's fine too. It doesn't matter. Just do what it says.
Just do what it says. So, in Abraham Hicks, Esther explains it as she started by just focusing on the sound of the refrigerator in order to empty her brain.
Ah,
So
interesting.
yes, so she listened to just the refrigerator and let the thoughts come and go. She didn't try to stop them. She didn't say, "Oh, I have a monkey brain." She just let them come and go. And that's how she opened up.
So it's important to understand meditation versus what Gail just said. So meditation are actually organized techniques. So for example, right now I do Kriya yogic meditation for a very particular purpose, which is about energy centers and opening what's called, so what does Krishna call it? It's union. So that's the idea. That's not what we're talking about. So what we're talking about is a meditative awareness where go walk in the woods. It's easy. Anybody can do this. All you have to do is get your brainwave frequency out of this intellectual, reason-based thinking place. Because you can't access, this is a problem with our whole society, is we're trying to access truth, solve all the problems in the world from the standpoint of reason at Stanford University in the laboratory. They can't do it. They have no idea what they're doing.
No, the universe is not an engineer.
No, it's not. But it could be.
I was
So
going
if
to say,
you're an
it has,
engineer
it
and
has
you
the
you
wisdom.
realize everything you were taught is wrong about how to get to truth, sorry, buddy, you can't do it in your laboratory
Right.
or in the world. You can't do it from the consciousness of rational thinking. That is one of the biggest lies of the modern era. We are trying to solve the problem, which is a big problem we've got right now in all aspects of life with our brain.
I am so grateful that my experience as a leader when I was in corporate was that of utter stupidity, because I was not a graduate from college.
Oh,
I was a street kid. I was a gang kid.
oh, I didn't know that.
Yes, I
You
was
got
a
to tell
gang
that
kid.
story a little.
Oh my God. And what happened was I was working in this company, and a lot of what was going on, I worked with my boss. And yes, where do you want to be in 5 years? I want your job. And then I forgot about it. 2 years later, I get a call from the president. We're in trouble. Our main customer, supplier, it wants to pull out. And I think you can save us. I'm
Wow.
firing your boss. And I'm like, sure. Right? I figured, again, stupidity. They were so bad, there was only one place to go but up. But because of that mindset, and because I had no preconceived ideas as to what I was supposed to do, I did everything right. I had Midas touch, everything was beautiful. Within 6 months, 9 months, we were actually looking how to spend money because taxes were coming up. We bought more software, more computers, we upgraded, right? from about ready to close the doors because I followed my gut.
Yes. It's really that simple, folks. You just have to. So we got a few people
Okay, good.
in the
Let's.
chat here. Tenyet Colon. Well, thank you. So she says this is such a great conversation. Florian, my buddy, is on here. Everything is energy and connected. We can get the answers everywhere. Energy and connected. So Florian is doing a lot with me with Red Pill Pathway. Actually, he is really had the similar experiences of what we're talking about. So we talk on a regular basis. That gives me an idea here for people. Is there's a concept in Buddhism called the Sangha, and you see this really in all traditions of the collective. Napoleon Hill talks about this as the mastermind. He's not talking about a hot seat group. what he's what he's talking about is when the desire towards an aim is strong enough in the group of individuals that have bonded together, and there is a organizing principle around that and a collective build to bring those people together, there's a logarithmic exponential increase in the power and access to that power. It's important to find your people, in other words.
Right.
This was the pandemic gift for me. People turned their cameras on Zoom, and everybody flooded into LinkedIn, and I got to meet my people. Gail, you're one
Right.
of them. And we would not have found each other if it wasn't for the pandemic. What
Right.
is the impact of this? It is the evolution of the consciousness of the human species. That's what we're really doing here. It's really important because we're driving the bus off the cliff.
Yes. And
Right.
the bus is going to spread wings and we're going to fly.
That's right. And people are like, how is that possible? We only have 20 years for climate change. I'm like, this is an infinite power source. The answer is there. Who do you think's working on this? Thomas Edison and Nikolai. They're working on this stuff for us.
Right.
We have to open ourselves up and prepare ourselves to receive that wisdom and do our part. That's it.
Right. And look at the possibilities for solutions. And I don't want to be Pollyanna about it because that's bullshit too. That's another false story, but get out of your own way of fear. And that's part of when you're working on yourself. Fear doesn't enter my life anymore. And do fearful things happen? If I'm going to get hit by a bus, I do move out of the way, I don't think it's
David Hawkins said, don't get in a cage with a Komodo dragon.
Right. Let's not test it. However, the fear is proportionate to the situation. So it's not inappropriate fear. It's not made up fear. It's not fear of consequences. And that's it. It's learning to be present, Larry, I think. And you hear that be present, but no one ever explains what that is. You're explaining it by saying, just sit for 30 minutes with yourself.
Yes. And this is again, another problem is mindfulness and meditative practices are being stripped out of spiritual traditions that were given to the societies that opened up as a society, allowing them to receive this. The ancient Indian cultures in the north of India, the Tibetan Buddhism, all of this. This is a complete and comprehensive system. And now what we have is people setting up coaching practices, teaching people mindfulness meditation. And I'm like, it's not going to work. Why? Because the eightfold path in Buddhism is eightfold. It's not onefold. It's not the onefold path. Wisdom is the beginning. So knowing truth and how things work comes before the meditative practices, but the meditative practices help you get to that. So these things fold into themselves and fold together. If you eliminate part of it, it's not going to work.
Yeah. And that's what makes it seem, it's not, but seem from an egoic perspective, complex.
Yes.
Right.
Because it's being taught wrong.
Right. And so we think everything is so hard. And the thing is everything is so easy. It
Isn't
is
it?
so easy. Just let go of your ego, let go of attachment. And I don't want to say kill ego. Ego has a very important job to do, but put it in its place. Nope, this is not your job to run my life, ego. Your job is to just keep me safe, right? And keep me safe from real dangers, not made up dangers, please.
I'm going to give a little different angle on it for me. So I call it the board of directors meeting. So the the chairman of the board is your true self, and the true self should always make the decisions and be in charge. Do not run your life. Let that part of yourself run your life. It's a lot smarter than you are. It'll make you a lot happier, and it'll get you everything you always wanted. So that's that. So the ego part to me is I would call there's a creative component. And this is the part that really can do amazing things in this world. But that creative part is not your true self. It's
Right.
temporary and it's supportive and helpful. So we think that's anyways, that's a whole other conversation.
Well,
So
no, that's the
well,
team. That's the
wait,
staff.
two more, real quick, and
Okay,
then
good.
the other part is your analytic part, which is your expert. It's going to figure stuff out. How do you manipulate and work in the society? And then the third part is the part that's going to stop you from doing stupid stuff. So that's basically the part of yourself trying to keep you safe. A lot of the mindset people are trying to kill that part and bring everything into the creative sage brain. That's complete misunderstanding of how this system works.
Right. And if you study the tree of life, Kabbalah, and patterns on the trestle board, it's all about balance. Our body is symmetrical because our body is balanced, created through the Kabbalic process. We are the tree of life, we are God.
Oh wow, you just explained to me something that I've been reading I couldn't understand. So that's why the Torah or it looks like a person
Right.
in a way, and it's got
Yes.
the upper and it's got the pillar in the middle with the energy coming into
Exactly.
the bottom. And oh, okay, well, thank you.
That's like the spinal cord. Yes.
Yes, yes. So that's the preface of your book. I imagine it's
There you
explaining
go.
because it's very complicated.
Right.
Um,
Right. Right. And we don't need the complication. We don't need to understand. We need to receive.
yes, and what's complicated are beliefs that aren't true. So when you are mired in everything we were taught is wrong, please just understand that I'm not being a jerk and I'm not a rebel against the society, although I am. But the point of saying that is that it is your belief systems that are not true that is holding you back from entering this simple life of flow.
Yeah. 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 And we've all been in and out of it our entire life. We have moments of it. And so we know what that feels like. And some of us really desire, I call it feeling delicious. For me, I feel delicious when I am in flow and I'm making a choice that's perfectly aligned to who I am.
Yes, and the ayahuasca crowd, I think, has got the right idea to start. So there's nothing wrong with doing what you can do. So for me personally, on April 20 of let's see 2011, I did a weekend and I did shadow work. So I unveiled some things inside myself and started to mix things up so I could see more of the truth of my childhood belief
Yeah.
system. That was really meaningful, but that's not the point. That is a beginning exercise to start getting to the point. And the same with an ayahuasca weekend. It gives you that feeling of enlightenment and flow, which really just allows you to experience your pain so you can get the real thing or work towards it. You have to earn this, in other words. This
You have to earn it. And I have many friends who do sacred medicine, is what they call it now. And I see it. The fingernails are on the chalkboard again.
yes.
It is not the answer. It is a step.
It's a tool set, basically.
Right.
It's
Right. So it's the
helpful.
90%, not the 100%, and
Yes.
can be harmful if you're not careful.
We went to this, 90%, 99%. I'm using 99% to make a point which is that almost there isn't there. So if somebody is teaching these kinds of things thinking they know the answer, they don't know the answer because they're still thinking about it in the context of their personal experience.
Exactly.
That's the problem. And people who are teaching sacred medicine, the occult arts, Akashic record, channeling, from that standpoint, are going to do damage to a lot of people who are looking to them for an answer when they don't have an answer, because no one has an answer for anybody else.
Right. That's why I say for me. And I always prefer this for me because I am a snowflake, as are you. Right. We access information differently. We process it differently. And our makeup and our blueprint is different.
Very different. And what's important to understand is so what do we do then? How do we do it? Well, the way we do it is through a truth system, or developing your own access to a truth system. Whatever that system is, it has to include various components where you see the truth of how the world works. You see the truth of yourself and where you are, as painful as it is. There's an action component where you learn how to act in a different way. And there's an impact component where you impact on yourself and others in a different way.
Right.
When that elevates, things change really quickly.
Yeah. And you can't explain it. It's not tangible. And I think that's where Larry and I kind of struggle, and we're trying to do for you is to bring this to light in a way that will motivate you for more, to look for more.
Yes. And I'm aware there's people who are going to want to cut my head off. And that's just part of the game in a way. It would be easy. So we'll go back to the archetypes. We've talked about this before. There's 12 different vision types. One of them is truth teller. And Gail and I are cursed and blessed at the same time. In other words, any vision I create has to have a truth-telling component. And as you saw with George Carlin, one of my favorite comedians, we still have some today, Dave Chappelle, Ricky Gervais, Aziz Ansari, they tell the whole truth.
Right.
The whole truth. You don't get to hold back. And you're going to offend groups of people that have a belief system that's wrong.
Well, and I have to tell you, the first time that I got a hate comment on Facebook, I had a friend of mine send me a message. She goes, "You hit the big time, Gail."
Yes. I look forward to them. You know what I'm getting now? I'm getting a lot of Christian scripture quoters.
Yes. They're trying to save your soul.
And I'm like, what? So what do you think?
Right.
So yeah, I'm glad you remembered the quote. What is your experience of what I just said?
And there is no saving. It's like the conversation I had with my grandson. There's no saving my soul. My soul is intact and connected.
It's already fine.
Right. It was fine before I came here, and it's going to be fine when I'm done, and it's fine while I'm going through this journey. Yes. Right.
So let's take on Christianity.
Okay.
Can we? Okay, here we go, folks.
Left. We might have to extend.
Here we go, folks. Well, I'm on vacation. I got to leave on time. So here we go. So there's a man by the name of Yogananda, Indian, right? Indian guru, yogic guru, from a tradition that goes back to Krishna. So knows a few things about life, right?
Yeah.
So he was given the responsibility to reinterpret the Christian Bible for Christians in our country and around the world who don't know anything about Christianity. I'm reading it. It's really good. And it explains how it really works. Guess what? It's exactly the same as the Indian Hindu systems.
Right.
Come from the Bhagavad Gita. It's exactly the same thing. If you want to understand your own Christianity, you must recognize everything you were taught about it is wrong.
Right.
Pretty much that simple.
Right. Right. And that is, so here's another thing. So I told you I was raised as a street kid. I was also raised as a heathen. I was not raised with any religion, which made me very curious about religion because all of my friends were going to temple, going to church, and I wasn't. right? And so at 13, a friend of mine and I, arm in arm, would go to a church every week. And we'd come out and go, well, what do you think about that sermon? And we would make our pros and cons about what we thought about that religion based on a sermon, right? So my quest for the truth started then at 13.
Started at 13. And
Yeah.
I think the quest for the truth is important, and there's well-meaning. So Christianity is helpful. So people can be in a community, they can get comfort, they can get support.
Right.
At the end of the day, those teachings from Jesus Christ and the apostles are 100% on. They got distorted. So when you have a few generations down, the same thing happened in Buddhism. The teachings get distorted because the 99 percenters take over.
Right.
And confuse everyone, like the idea of we got to kill our ego and remove it. That's wrong, right? That's a Buddhist teaching. There's some Buddhist traditions that believe that kinds of things. Jesus Christ, oh, there's no reincarnation. What's that? We just go to heaven. No, that's not how it works. So there's a misunderstanding of what was taught. So what's your responsibility? Get to the truth of your own tradition. Make that your life's mission.
Right. Right. And the truth will set you free. It will set you free.
It's all quite simple at the end of the day, isn't it?
It really is, and it's delicious.
All right. Well, so what I would wrap up with here is an idea that people can use, hopefully. So what I would suggest is when you evaluate an option to put your attention and time, ask yourself simply, is what I am hearing the story of an individual who got something improved in this world? Were they able to make more money? Were they able to be happier? Were they able to whatever? If that's the case, you've run across a guru that has helpful information to solve a problem. If you have a problem, 90, yeah, or less. If you have a problem to solve, that may be useful. Now, if you have a state of being issue, in other words, a feeling something's missing, my life is not quite what I wanted, I feel like I'm made for something better, I know I've always been supposed to do something and I can't quite make it happen, then you need a truth system. And it doesn't matter which one it is, it just matters that you can use it. How do you find a truth system? It's not about the person who created it. And I'll give a few examples. The Go-Giver, obviously. The Four Agreements, obviously a truth system. Think and Grow Rich is a truth system with a missing, confused interpretation. So Napoleon Hill never really intended for people to look at that as a book about money. It wasn't about money. It was about finding your true self. But it appears to be about money because of the time and circumstances in which it was written and what needed to be put in so people would actually buy it.
Right.
Those are true systems.
And there are many out there, and many, many more coming to light, like Journey to Enlightenment, right? Which is the first step on the journey. And that's why I call it a journey, because there's always more to understand. And I don't want to even say understand, to know.
Experience.
Because there's no understanding a lot of this stuff. If I were to try and understand it, I would lose it.
Yeah, and the Kabbalah is clear on that, right? We don't get wisdom, we don't get understanding. We get experience of it.
Right.
Yes.
Right. And we get to weigh that experience. So it's really, it really is very complex.
And simple.
And yet so simple. Just let go of your attachments and just listen, and don't question when you get that impulse, however you receive it. Because when you start paying attention It's like, I realized mine was the heart. Larry, you realized yours is the head. Some people, it's what they hear, blah, blah, blah. It's because, oh, every time I do get that nudge and I follow the nudge, things are pretty awesome. Maybe I'll listen to the nudge again. Oh, look it, I'm listening to the nudge. It wants me to do what? Okay, I'm going to do it. Holy moly, look what just happened, right? That's,
That's pretty much it.
yeah,
And part of it, I think there's a humility to this that's important, which is to recognize that this we we're not the big brain in the room here. So the it's flipped. We think that this is the real world. This is not the real world. This is a movie. This is an opportunity. Does it exist? Of course it exists. It's right in front of us. Is it permanent? No. It's going to go away. It's all going to go away. What's going to be left? The only constant, as Einstein proved in his equation, is energy.
right.
Does the energy think?
It has consciousness,
How could it not?
right?
It has. I mean, where does the consciousness come from then? If we're going to die and our minds go away,
Right.
where is
do
that
they go?
anchor?
Where do they go when you sleep?
Where do they go?
Right. Right. Which was actually one of the analogies I used with my grandson. Is where do you go when you sleep? That's exactly where you're going to go. It's very
So
simple.
in Outwitting the Devil, Napoleon Hill kind of completes his philosophy, and I think the book's going to get thrown out, published in 2020, because the feminists and the politically correct crowd are going to say, "No,
I gotta jump on it.
they're going to throw it away." But that book is a book of wisdom.
Yeah.
In its time, it had a time and a place, but it has a time and a place now. If you get over yourself and your belief systems about what matters and what doesn't matter, and what he's teaching us, fairly simply, is to recognize that we have the opportunity in this culture that we live in right now to have a massive impact, because we, as kids, if we're taught as kids this truth and access to these truth systems, and we're teaching kids, like you're talking about, access to these truths, it's not confusing anymore because they have the mechanism inside them to figure it out. That was his big thing. It was like, we have to change the educational system.
Right. We have to
start with the adults.
And we have to not squelch it. My granddaughter, at one time I went to visit, and she's like, so you meditate? And she did, right? I said, well, I don't do that, but I do meditate. Would you like to meditate? And she said, sure. So I was going to do a guided meditation with her. She literally sat down, uncrossed her arms and legs, closed her eyes, and she was there. There was nothing. I just saw her body, and bam, she was already there.
Yeah.
She was there. There was no guiding her anywhere. So we lose that.
We lose it. So that's really interesting. So what's going on is we have the true self and we have the self of existence. Watch kids play. There's no difference. They're together. When does it separate? When they're taught things that aren't true.
Right.
The belief systems separate the selves. Now we have an existential crisis coming at some point.
Right.
What's an existential crisis? Your true self is saying, you're screwing up our life.
Right. Wait a minute. That's not what we came for.
Come back. Where did you go?
Right.
Well, societies with true systems don't have this problem. You think the Native Americans had people with existential crises? They did not.
They have the mushrooms that are still considered illegal in this country. The only place that you can get it is on a reservation.
And they use them within the context of the culture run by people who were shamans who understood how it all worked, not just how to give you the mushrooms.
Right. What is the journey and what is all that? We do need to go, don't we? Yes, we do.
Yeah, we only got a few minutes.
We're only a few minutes. So we can touch a little bit on the Native culture, which has been fascinating for me. I'm apparently, one of my grandparents was an American Indian, whatever that means.
Now you're going to get in trouble. I'm kidding. I don't care if I get in trouble anymore.
No, no. So have always been kind of curious about that particular culture, and I find it fascinating um, that Europeans tried to kill that culture.
Yeah,
And that's what they did when they explored the world, was kill anything that didn't fit into their truth,
exactly. That's exactly what happened. Yes.
right? Right,
Yes.
throughout. And so those cultures that were able to hang on to their beliefs and their truths were either wiped out or extricated, which is what happened with the American Indians. That, okay, don't touch my world with your, Satanism or whatever they called it. Um, and rather than being curious about, well, what is it that they're doing that maybe I could learn from? And
Mm.
is there something that I'm doing that maybe they could learn from? What a concept.
Yes, and they created a hell for themselves in doing that, and on Earth. And I don't think we know. So there's cycles of these things.
Hmm.
So there's a pattern underneath all this that we can't see. I know that I don't know why that happened, and how that's all going to happen, and how that's all going to work out.
Right, right.
Right, but that pattern, there is a sense of karmic perfection
Hmm.
around all of these different things.
Right. And what's interesting is people are now being like I'm being drawn to in in this country the native sites. Like I have a deep desire to go to the Devil's Mountain, which that's not its original name. Its original name, I forget what it was. It's more angelic,
Mm,
but we flipped it,
right.
right? And there's
Yeah.
the lie. We flipped it in order
Hmm.
to bury the power that's in that place.
Interesting. All right, Gail. It was a great conversation as always. So this will be up on YouTube in the recording, and we'll be back next Friday at the same time.
Yes, and who knows what we'll talk about.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Larry. This is great.
Thank
Bye bye,
you.
everybody.
Bye.